Hey, hey, my beautiful friends. Welcome to Miracle Lab. It's your girl Jules here, and I've got such a special guest for our One Thing series. I've got Melissa Collazo in the house. Woo woo. And if you are a part of Beauty Room or if you're a part of my life, you know that Melissa is a huge part of my heart in so many ways. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation with her and give you an opportunity to get to know her better. But just as far as like the highlight reel is concerned, y'all, Melissa is a highly sought after freelance makeup artist, and she's working in the DC, Washington area. So the DMV, she's got you covered. She's also been a huge part of New York Fashion Week, commercials, all sorts of big name things. So we're just so excited to have her here today. So welcome, Melissa. Hey.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me. Hello,
It's so
Miracle Lab.
good. Hey, I got to say, anytime I get to hang out with you is like always a really good day. So try to make that happen as much as possible. So how do we know each other, Melissa? Like this is a whole episode on its own, but I think we could give like the cliff notes of how we came together. What do you remember?
What do I remember? I remember being back in Highlands County, Sebring, Florida, where we came of age, grew up. And Jules, you're just always in my life in some way, shape, or form. My biggest memories of you, on top of just being a gorgeous smiling face at like dance recitals and events, is seeing you working at Lakeshore Mall at the Clinique counter in your cool little lab coat. And I was like, I know her. She's so cool. She looks like me and she does makeup, and I think it's so fabulous. And I just remember you just being a pretty consistent, kind, warm presence in my life from literally like my childhood until now. So that's how.
Oh my gosh. That's so sweet. That is so sweet. And I remember you being such an adorable child. Like what's so interesting is like that I got to see you as a little girl, and that I have that version of Melissa that not everybody has been blessed to see, so I got that. And then to see you now as a woman is like just incredible for me. And to just remember you being like this beautiful, precious child and so talented, like going here to dance recitals and all that, because our families were close. Your family was one of the only families that I was actually allowed to hang out with because my Puerto Rican mama was so strict. But you're Puerto Rican too, so that was like, okay, we're good. Like there's some kind of like safety within that. So so two Puerto Rican girls growing up in Highlands County. Shout out to the Bring. Whoop whoop. Sebring Blue Streaks. So what I remember is also there was always this love for makeup. Like I don't remember exactly. I'm trying to think now is like when I first remembered there being a connection with makeup, maybe it was those recitals because you had to wear, something so people could see you on stage. But I just remember like it always being a part of, your story. And I've always been so curious about your whole story, like I can kind of think I know it, because I've just been a part of your life and vice versa. But I don't know that I've actually really heard it from you. And I would love if you would share that with us.
Okay. So just general story overall, or just kind of my relationship to where I am now as a makeup artist and where that started and where it's at now? Like which direction are we going?
I would like to know.
Therapy session getting?
Listen, girlfriend, don't leave it out. Okay. I just want to know. I want to know the beginning, like, where you want to start, but I would like to go as far back as you're willing to go.
Sure. All right. So my story, just as Jules alluded, we grew up in a very small town, rural part of Central Florida, where as Caribbean descendants, people from the islands, we were quite the minority. There weren't a whole lot of us there. So, it was and being the youngest child, I was always trying to sort of find my footing and my identity, and where I could stand out and shine and get attention and things of that nature. So, um, pretty early on, I was drawn to the arts, particularly dance, and I found that that was a place where I felt like I could express myself, where I could really let my light shine, where I could get really good positive attention and things of that nature. So I started dancing at 2, 3, something like the really young age. And it took me through my entire life, all the way through college. Um, but I was always just a natural performer. I was that kid who, whenever we had family over or people over at the house, I was putting on little shows and things like that. And so, just like Jules said, makeup has always been a part of that. My mom was also very glam. I always credit her as being the first one who ever taught me how to contour. Because she was making it happen back in the day with like little Maybelline eyeshadows. And so that is where
hang on.
Yeah.
I just got to say, your mom has always been so beautiful. You're right. Like, as you're saying that, I'm like, I remember her at Max Longfield, like, and she was just so,
always
just
done up.
a siren, like just always so put together. And you're right. And I remember that being a big part of my childhood too, because my mom was the same, and just seeing that and just seeing like that pride and getting yourself ready no matter where you're going. But continue. I just had to shout out to you.
It's very much a part of the culture. It's so much a part of the culture, especially if you grew up on the island or have that really strong connection to, Puerto Rican culture in that way. Like, women didn't leave the house unless their hair was done, their makeup was on, their outfit was right. Like, it was just such a huge part of the expectation of what a woman was to be in Puerto Rican culture. So growing up as that bridge, generation, if you will. I'm the first person in my immediate family who was born and raised in the States. So when that happens, no matter what culture you come from, you really are creating that bridge between what is expected of people from that place and assimilating that to what it feels like to be in the States and be an American. So it's very much formed who I am and how I show up in the world, having that background, and then also sort of translating it through my filter, through my lens, and wanting to, again, assimilate and find my place here as an American. So it informed every single phase of my life through my teenage years, who I am as an adult, who I choose to show up as a mother now, as a mother to a daughter now. It becomes such a bigger conversation. But those early years were very much me watching my mom getting clues on what were her expectations of a, put together young lady, doing the things that she had really set up for me to do, things like dance, performing arts. And ultimately ended up taking me into musical theater through the Highlands Little Theater. I think it's got a different name. Highlands Lakeside Theater, it's called now. I also was in choir, show choir, basically anything that allowed me to be on a stage and in front of a spotlight. Like that's where I wanted to be. So
that was always so like amazing to me, like watching you. I just always was like, man, Melissa's confidence is just like through the roof. It just was so amazing to see you just saying like, put that light on me because I'm so ready to shine. Love it.
Yeah. And it's amazing how much, the how do we call it? I don't know, the unburdened feeling of youthfulness, not really being out in the world, not really having been, exposed to lots of different experiences that we go through as we mature and all of that. It's just that that youthful exuberance, you know what I mean? Like me at my truest, rawest form is going to be the person who really wants the spotlight, really wants to show you what I can do. And it's just amazing how life takes you on all these different journeys that kind of has you dull that shine a little bit. So I think that's very much a part of who I am and what I have to offer, and sort of the message that I'm trying to share is about finding and stepping into your light in a lot of ways. So it's interesting how that sort of
so
comes back
you're
around.
musical theater, you're doing show choir, you're doing all this stuff. I remember there being a headline in the paper about you being a makeup artist.
Yeah, I actually found that clipping just the other day. Wild. Yeah, talk about foreshadowing. I was helping out in one of the local churches. They were putting on a big Christmas play, and it was supposed to be a really modern take on the Christmas story. And one of the characters, because it's a story about the Bible, it's a story about Jesus, is, temptation's a big part of, good, bad, all of that, dark and light. So one of the characters was supposed to be sort of the embodiment of temptation, of Satan, of whatever you want to call it. And they had this idea, because this is, again, the late 90s, to make the character look like Darth Maul from Star Wars. So like the red and black faced character. And they were trying to find someone who would be willing to do that. And of course I'm like, I'll try it. Why not? Like, give me the paint. I wasn't a makeup artist. I had no ambitions to become a makeup artist at that time. But because that play was drawing so much attention, they posted a giant photo of me from behind the scenes in the local paper with the subscript that said Melissa Collazo, makeup artist, da, 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 da. And, at the time, I probably thought it was kind of cool and really didn't give it a second thought. But now, 25 years later, looking back at it, I'm like, whoa, talk about little God wink, talk about foreshadowing. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I was like, talk about a message that the universe didn't want you to miss. It's like, hey, honey, you're going to be a makeup artist. You are one.
You already are one. We're giving you that title. So, wow, wild.
Yeah. So you go on. So we leave Highlands County, and then what does Melissa do?
Okay, so I graduated. I had a very late birthday, so I graduated, and I was still 17 years old at the time. So I had trouble with the route towards college and towards secondary education was definitely expected. Like, it wasn't a question. Like, it was the expectation of my family and all of that that would be the natural direction. But it wasn't super linear. It wasn't super laid out and clear. Like, it took me, it was a bit of a challenge to get accepted to college. So I ended up getting in at the University of Central Florida in Orlando as a conditional acceptance. And what that means is, like, we're not going to go ahead and accept you for the fall. We're going to let you come here for the summer and see how you do. And if you do well in your classes, then we'll let you continue on as a full-time student. The reason for that is because I wasn't the best test taker. I didn't really have the preparation that I feel like a lot of my peers did, because the coming in as an immigrant family, it's just a little bit different. My mom never went to college, so she didn't know how to prepare me. She didn't know that maybe we should get you some SAT, ACT test prep, things like that. So I walk in to take this test, just kind of like cold, blind, take it. And I did all right, but I wasn't like super college ready, if you will, or competitive as far as scoring goes. My grades were always great. But, fast forward me in my 30s, I'm finding out now later in life that I actually have some of these like ADD and other things that really could have been great to have known back then, so that I could have resources that would have helped me be a bit more successful in those ways. But all that to say, I did go to college. Was I the best college student? Meh, I got the paper, I did the thing, but, I was definitely someone who had experienced a certain amount of like academic success in K through 12 and then got to college and then was sort of like directionless. Because again, it was just sort of the expected path. It was the 13th grade. So those college years were really interesting as far as me coming to really understand who I am, what I want to do, what lights me up, what is my next thing. It's not like I was going towards being a doctor, a lawyer, like some sort of like really specific career path. It was a lot of me just kind of floating and figuring things out along the way. So if anything, I did learn that about myself, that I can make $1 out of 15 cents when it comes to just, like me just figuring it out and, me sort of just being on my own and sort of striking my own path and blazing my own trail. College was definitely a time where I sort of found my people as well, because for the most part, I really didn't have a lot of that growing up, in Sebring. Like, I can't say that I have like these, aside from you, maybe one other person, like these sort of tried and truly relationships, girlfriends that I've had since like middle school or high school. I didn't really have that experience. So college really afforded me a lot of those experiences of finding my people. It's where I met my husband. And it was, it was more about everything but academics for me at the end of the day. It was about me growing up and me really just sort of the beginning stages of me figuring out who I was going to be as a person.
That's so interesting that, what you were saying about not being prepped for college, because same situation with me. Like, to me, I was like, I got to get done with school so I can make some money. Like, that was always like, I was like, what are you talking about, 4 years? And I got to pay to go to that school. And I got, no. And to me, it just didn't make good business sense for me, So I can, relate to your story in that, of just feeling like there's got to be a different path. There's got to be something else, So for me, I was like, yeah, I don't want to go that route. So I'm going to go and work at the cleaning counter that you saw me at, because I was like, I could work here for 40 hours a week and then I can but if I go to school, that's going to cut down on my hours. That's how I was just processing it, because I just knew that was something else that I wanted to do. And then when you went to college, it's so interesting that you started to learn these things about yourself kind of later, of like, oh, I'm not the best test taker. Like, so many people relate to that, right? Even if you do prep, you can still just not be a good test taker because of all of the things that it brings up, and then shuts your brain down. Like, when all that anxiety, all that starts to, and you're like, yep, there went my command center. No clue what these answers are right this moment.
Absolutely. So the test taking was one of them. Also, note taking was a big one. I didn't realize that I wasn't a good note taker until I got into those college level courses. And in the beginning, I was really trying towards more of a medical direction. I was in going towards communicative disorders. So I thought I was going to be like a speech pathologist or an audiologist or something to that degree. Yeah. Oh. And once I got into those like chemistry and biology classes and anatomy and physiology, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't remember any of that. You know what I mean? I would sit down and
It's not so fun. Yeah.
No, I would sit down and try and study, and it would just, my brain, like you said, would just completely shut down, and I would just sit for hours just staring at the same page. Yeah, it's again, not now looking back at it as an adult and having a better understanding of sort of how my brain works. It all makes sense. It all makes sense why it was so challenging.
Another point that I want to circle back to is you were saying about not having the close girl connections growing up. You and I didn't make our connection until we were women, till we were outside of the state of Florida, actually. So, I feel that with you. And I, you know, with our area and stuff, you know, being the outsiders, if you will, right? Because we're both similar. Like we're both Puerto Rican. We're the minority in a not only poverty town, but also it was like white and black. That was it, you know? And so for us, it was like, okay, I'm kind of in the middle here. And I remember middle school, jungle fever came out. And then they started calling me tropical fever. And I was like, what the heck? You know, so it was just to give them, you know, just an idea of, you know, what we were dealing with, you know, learning who we are in this environment. And then, but I love how in your story, college ended up being important for you because that you had so many connections that were waiting for you there, which is huge. So sometimes you think you're going in for something, but then God has a different plan. And your husband shows up in the story, you know, your friends that end up being like lifelong sisterhood friends, you know, like it's just amazing how that all worked out for you in a different way, maybe even in a greater way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I always talk about my experience in college being so much more about all the peripheral stuff. You know, so much, again, I think I said this already, but to reiterate, like it was so much less about getting the paper, getting the degree, the academic portion, and so much more about the personal growth and interpersonal growth and the experiences of being away from home by myself, meeting all sorts of different people, finding people that were like me, which was hard to find in Highlands County, like other Latinos, other people who had the same sort of lived experience than I did that I couldn't find, or, you know, it was hard to find people to relate to back home, as you know. So it was so much more about that experience than anything else. So I'm in college. I joined a sorority because, again, I was trying to just find my people, and it's my senior year. At this point, I had met the man who later on would become my husband, but I wanted to have a year where I could just like be young and wild and free and be girly and do all of that stuff. So I decided to move into the sorority house. And it was during that time that I found and made like the best, most wonderful lifelong friends ever. But then on top of that, I started to get that little like itch, like the little tap on my shoulder, like, hey girl, this beauty thing is real. Because living in the sorority house, you know, almost every day of the week, someone's going somewhere. And I was starting to get known as the beauty girl, like on top of being the dancer and all of that stuff, like I was also really good at makeup. So I remember getting around to like formals time of year where like fraternities and sororities would have their formals, and I was taking clients in my bathroom at the sorority house, getting people ready to go to different formals and things. I was the friend that got everybody ready to go out in the evenings, you know, for whatever events. So much so that, you know, I was thinking to myself, like, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could just like go work at the Mac counter or anything like that? But that's when the sort of imposter syndrome or that little voice, you know, starts creeping and saying, nah, girl, you can't do that. Like, look at them and look at them, the talent they have. And we're talking like late 90s, early 2000s Mac, which you would walk in and see like full on drag, the most amazing makeup looks you'd ever seen. And me, who just does like basic beauty, which I, at the time, looked down upon. So I was always too intimidated to even audition.
Because Mac back in that day was like you said, the pinnacle. Like I remember, so, you know, we would have to, from Highlands County, travel to Orlando just to get to the Mac counter. And when we were there, then it was like, everyone's in black and everyone is like super cool and they have the coolest hair and the outfits. And you're like, how much black stuff do you own? Like, whoa, right? Like, right. Oh, wow. And it was just, you know, just the epitome really of cool for us.
Yeah.
But also because there was a part of us that wanted to be that, right? We wanted to do that job. So that is such an intimidating factor, if you will, of like, me be that? but the whole clue that you're even interested in that is like your interest is telling you like, yeah, you can, you too, you like it.
Yeah. And so, going back for just a moment, I was speaking earlier about, the childlike sort of wonderment and the freedom that you have as a child to be so much more courageous. And by that point in my life, into my early 20s, that's when I'm experiencing my first big heartbreaks and rejections. I wanted to join the dance team the theater program at UCF originally before I went, another direction with my major. And I was denied. I was rejected. And I remember that being such a huge turning point experience for me, sort of shrinking myself and maybe starting to think, oh, like, maybe you're not all that. Like, I know you come from this small town where like you were a superstar and you weren't afraid of the spotlight, but like, maybe you need to tone that down a little bit. So it created a ripple effect that sort of even to this day, honestly, in a lot of ways has sort of reached its little ways, its little fingers into a lot of feelings of self-doubt, self-judgment, that imposter sort of feeling. And I never did. I never tried. I never even tried because I was so intimidated at that point. So again, like I said, it was something that just was something that I could do well. It was something that I could gift to friends for their weddings, because by the time I graduated from college, I had done 2 girlfriends' wedding makeup for their weddings. And it was just a thing I knew how to do really well. And it was never an idea or a thought of being a career down the road. I ended up actually working in education as a college and career advisor. I got my first job at University High School in Orlando, working the front desk, and sort of made my way up. I got in good with the administration there, and they saw the way that I related to the kids and the way that I spoke to them, mentorship. And my minor was in psychology, so that was always a part of what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to make people feel good. I wanted to help people make good choices for themselves. So I was headed in the direction of becoming a school guidance counselor, but that required more college. And as we know at this point, college and Melissa are not best friends. So it was a really tough decision of like, do I go back? Do I try? How do I overcome some of these challenges? Like, I really don't want to have to do more school, but man, I'm going to need it if I want to get from point A to point B. So my college sweetheart becomes my husband. That husband goes from being a history teacher to joining the military. He decides that he does not want to be the 13th teacher in his lineage, in his family. He was literally like 13th or 14th that was going into teaching. And, as a history teacher, he had such an affinity for the military. He just felt that calling. So as at the time, someone who was a college and career advisor hooked him up. I was like, I know all the recruiters in the area. Come talk. I'm going to meet you. I'm going to hook you up. This guy's going to take care of you. And so he ended up joining the Marine Corps. And when he made that big leap and moved us all the way to California, that's when I said, you know what? This is my chance. This is my opportunity. I'm going to seize it. If he can do it, I'm going to take the leap of faith in trying to figure out how to make this makeup thing into a viable career. So that was the beginning. That was 2011.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting so excited listening to your story, because there's parts of it that I've not heard before. Like I didn't realize that you guided David into his now career. Like, wow, that's so cool. Okay, keep going. I'm gonna okay.
Yeah, so we're in Cali. At this point, I had started my master's degree online to try and become a guidance counselor. And it was just like epic fail. Like I just had such a hard time. Academics was just not something that came natural to me at that higher level. So like I said, I said, you know what, I'm done. I want a job that I can take with me anywhere in the world, and a job that does not feel like work. So how do we do it? And then that's when I went on Facebook and I found my friend Jules, because I realized that Jules, that's you. Jules is a working makeup artist, and I did not realize this. And so I hit you up. I slid into your DMs and was like, hey, I hope you remember me. I have this desire. I have this thing on my heart that I want to become a makeup artist. And I just want to know how you did it. At the time, I wasn't really looking for like a teacher or a mentor. I just wanted some like guidance on like, how do you get from here to there? So that's where you came back into my life.
Yeah. And it was, it's also an example that you can do it too. I think that was probably the biggest thing, is just because we come from the same place, we're the same, right? So it's like, oh, wait, she figured this out. What is it? What's the key here? What's the secret sauce, if you will, right? And so we start working together. You come to, let me let you tell the story. Back up.
Yeah. So at the time you were like, you just need to get as many people in your chair as possible. You just need to get your hands on as many people's faces as you can. So I just started reaching out to my neighbors, anyone who would sit and hang out with me. And that's when I really got my brushes moving. I started building a kit. At the time, my husband had to do a small stint away from me. He was going to be away for 4 months. And so I didn't want to be stuck in California alone. I went back to Highlands County. I went back to Sebring. This is now almost 10 years after I had graduated from college. I never moved back home. Like, I left at 17 and like didn't look in the rearview mirror when it came to Sebring. So now here I am, like 27 at this point, moving back, living in my old bedroom with my mom because my husband's away, and really just starting to like figure things out. Again, I was building my kit. I was still practicing. I was going to be working for my friend who was getting married later on that year. So I was going to be doing some of the bridesmaids. And then we had orders after he was done in his stint in Texas to move to Maryland. So perfect timing. He was going to fly back. We were going to be at that friend's wedding, and then we were going to drive from Florida all the way up to Maryland. Well, wouldn't you know that Savannah is right off 95. So
that's where I'm hanging out now.
Yeah. So at the time we had been just like communicating back and forth, but it wasn't really anything serious. And you were gracious enough to host me and my husband and our dog for a day or two. And, that's when the thought of you actually mentoring me and sort of taking me under your wing came to be.
Yeah. And we had a good time. We definitely did. So you showed up ready to work. I mean, you were going back and forth, and you put in the effort. So you were definitely in a space of your life where you were ready to double down on it. Like you were ready to go all in.
Absolutely. Because we didn't have kids at the time, which was really helpful in a lot of ways because we had a little bit more income to work with. I could take the time to come down there and spend, a week, sometimes 2, working and assisting you, and have it not be as disruptive as it would be if I had already been a mom, for example, or if I needed to work 40 hours a week. So I'm thankful to have had the experience of, being a military spouse, being a military family, where a lot of sort of the basic necessities are covered. And then, of course, having the support of my husband, who was like, do your thing, shoot for the stars, go for it. So.
Yes, he was. He was right there with us. Like, yeah, all the makeup. Yes, he was like such a big supporter. Yeah. So we, we're training. You're at the level of being a makeup artist. Like you are a legit makeup artist at this point. So take me on the story, on the journey from that point.
I was in class with you and I started feeling a little funny. And I excused myself a couple of times to the restroom. And I thought to myself, there's something weird going on. I'm going to run down to this Walgreens down the street and pick up a test. And I took a test, and wouldn't you know, I was pregnant. At the same time of me like being in it with you and really trying to like hit it hard with the makeup thing. So I find out I'm pregnant. It was not planned. And it was just like crazy, wild, exciting, all the feelings, all the things. So we start planning, internalizing the fact that, my husband and I, his name's David, that David and I are going to be parents, and we go to the doctors and schedule all the appointments and all of that stuff. And we learned pretty early on, like the 6 or 8 week visit, that baby wasn't really measuring quite right, that things are a little funny. We're going to track it, come back in 2 weeks. And then at the 12-week nuchal translucency screening, we find out that baby's not looking so good. Don't worry. Your body's going to do what it needs to do, and it's going to just sort of naturally pass. I was expecting to have a miscarriage at any moment. So at the time, I'm still holding out hope, relying, being faithful, still coming down to Savannah to work with you on like fashion night out and things of that nature, and just trying to be a vessel for this baby. It was a lot of doctor's appointments. It was a lot of screenings. It was a lot of amniocentesis and whatever the other test is called, just like really invasive sort of tests. Again, all with this expectation that my body would just do what it needed to do. And it never did. At the 20-week screening, we found out that the baby was going to be completely unviable. My body was just life support at this point for this baby who wasn't going to make it. And so I had to make the horrible decision to induce, because in the state of Maryland, you have it until 20 weeks or 21 weeks to make that choice. And we decided that my life was going to be at risk if we continued further. So, when the moment that David looked at me and was like, I can't lose both of you, was like, okay. And so thankfully we had the wonderful hospital at Johns Hopkins, and the people really took amazing care of us. And I gave birth and said goodbye to my baby in the same day. And it was a earth-shattering, life-altering experience. It was beautiful and horrible, and it was really just a turning point for me as far as really focusing on the person that I wanted to be, the mother that I wanted to be. It definitely threw my life, my mental health, my physical health, all of those things for a loop for a little while. And makeup sort of went to the back burner. Everything went to the back burner while I healed emotionally and physically and all of that. So I am one of the 1 in 4 of us who suffer from miscarriage, or in my case, stillbirth. And it is not a part of my story that I leave out. It is not a part of my story that I'm ashamed of. Because so many of us have experienced it, and it is always so difficult to talk about, but it's so necessary for people to see themselves in others who've experienced the same thing. So I can't tell my story without acknowledging my little angel baby, Gabby, who was my first, and is a blessing.
Well, thank you for sharing Gabby with us, so we can feel her power and strength coming through you too.
Yeah. Yeah. So after experiencing the loss of Gabby, we became pregnant not too long after. We gave it probably maybe 6 months or so before we started, having the conversation about having kids again. And we then got pregnant with my daughter, Mia, he just turned 9. And because of my first experience, I knew that it was very natural to sort of have that pendulum swing in the opposite direction of like, I'm pregnant. I need to protect this pregnancy. I need to just sit. I need to just not do anything. I need to protect this little baby. And
where's the bubble wrap? Let's wrap me in bubble wrap. Like, let's right, or all of it, just all the prayers and all the cushion.
Exactly. So she came into my world and is my world, and it's just been such an interesting and amazing ride, this journey of motherhood. I, shortly after having her, was able to quickly find sort of my village, my tribe of people who linked arms with me on this motherhood experience through a community called Fit for Mom. I became a certified fitness instructor with them. So that became my focus because, again, it was like a built-in community, a built-in family, and was just such everything that I needed at that time. After having Mia and before getting pregnant with my second kid, David, I started feeling that itch again of like wanting to get my brushes moving. I had gone into like my local Ulta just for an event, like as a customer, and was getting my makeup done at the Smashbox counter and just having casual conversation. And I had mentioned to the woman doing my makeup that, oh yeah, I dabbled in makeup. I've done a little of this, a little of that, but I put it down and I haven't really done much with it. And she's like,
you dabbled? You told her you dabbled?
I did a little of this, a little of that.
I'm glad lightning didn't strike you down for that. You did more than that, but keep going. I love it. You're like, she's like, I know my way around a mascara or so,
just a bit. And it turns out she was like the district manager or something. She's like, you want some hours? And I was like, okay. When do I start? So, that was kind of like my first foray back after having taken a hiatus for a while with, my pregnancies. And it was so great. It was just something I did a couple hours of the week at the Ulta down the road. I would do a couple of events for them because it's Smashbox. So it's all about like fashion and photography and all of that stuff. So it was the type of makeup that I really enjoyed doing. And I love just working with people and helping just the everyday woman come in and feel great in their own skin. Let me show you based on what I've learned from my experience, let me hip you to some of this cool pro product and we'll get you right. So that was what guided me back. I had my son. Again, that's the beauty of being a freelancer and being sort of like an entrepreneur, is that you can sort of pick it up and put it down when you need to, when life demands it. So I went from being, again, like a hobbyist into a little bit of a part-timer, and then I put it down again. And then after I had my son, I was like, now I'm a mother of 2. I got 2 kids in diapers. and I want to do this thing over here, but I just don't know how this is going to work in my life. I can't figure out how to also be a business owner on top of being a wife, a military wife, having 2 kids. My husband had gone back to school for his master's as well. I'm like, we got too many plates spinning. I don't know how to do this, but I knew I needed something for me. And I remember sitting at my computer and I said out loud to David, like, I think I'm just going to have to give this up completely. Like, it was fun, but I don't know how to be all these things. And universe, God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it, was like, nah, girl, here's an ad. Here's an advertisement that I'm going to put in front of you. In that week alone, I saw like 2 or 3 advertisements for different bridal agencies in my area who were hiring. So I was like, well, damn. Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Got the message. So I went in and auditioned for one in particular that as soon as I walked into the building, I was like, ooh, yeah, this is nice. And met with the owner and did a little, I had to put on a show for her, song and dance, do the whole thing. And she was like, I don't normally do this, but we need someone for a wedding this Saturday. Are you free? Because she had just had someone like just up and quit on her with contracts still on the books and everything. She's like, we need someone to cover this guy's weddings. Can you do that? Yep. And it was perfect because I didn't own the business. I didn't have to do a lot of the legwork when it came to client facing things like contracts and phone calls and emails. I got to just show up, do the makeup, and go home and wait on my paycheck, which was like perfect. So I started with doing like 1 wedding a month, and then I would do 2 weddings a month. And then as the kids got older, my mom ended up moving in with us at a certain point, which gave us a 3-man rotation on raising these kids. So now I have all this time and all this help to be able to really start chasing after my dreams. So I quickly rose up the ranks with that bridal company. I was the top selling or like top rated makeup artist on the team. I was now educating. So as new people were brought in, I was able to teach them. I would teach them how to airbrush and, I would teach them how to create foundation, from scratch, and just started putting them through their paces, things that they may not have ever learned before, because a lot of makeup artists are self-taught. So a lot of the things that I learned, thankfully, with you, Jules, I was able to sort of pass on to the next generation of people coming in.
That's so sweet. I was thinking about when you were creating, the visual in my mind was playing about when the first time you created your own foundation from colors, not from foundation colors, from yellow and white and peach and
blue.
It was just so cool to hear how then that came through you. Keep going.
Yeah, the ripple effects, right? So I had gotten to the point where, as for those of you that are not in the bridal industry, it's a very grueling industry to be in. It's every weekend, sometimes multiple events in a weekend, sometimes multiple events in a day. It's a lot of hours on your feet. And it's also a lot of holding space for people at their most vulnerable, on their most important day of their lives, which is a lot to carry as a makeup artist, showing up and sort of putting on the show. I was finding that coming back home, I would sit on the couch. The moment that I sat down, I wasn't able to get back up. My back, my knees, my hips, my feet, my everything was hurting. And then I had to come home to 2 toddlers that needed me. So it was just a lot. And after a couple of years of being at that pace, I was already starting to think of like, okay, this is great and all, but I've hit the glass ceiling where I'm at. I was ready to be not the smartest person in the room again. I think there's a lot that comes from not being the smartest person in the room. So I was looking for those opportunities where I might be able to assist someone who is at a level or, higher than I am. I was ready to be the learner again. And then on top of that, I was also looking for opportunities where I could have another stream of income. I wanted to make money while I slept. So I was at a, training program with our friends over at the makeup show. They do this program called iArtist. It's like a 3-day full immersive experience. And that's when I met my current mentor, Kat Aragon, who is a celebrity makeup artist, and she's also with LimeLife by Alcone. And so she was talking about the opportunity of what it is to retail product and use your expertise to help other people and also be able to make an income through commissions through selling products and things of that nature. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give that a try. So I signed up like 2 weeks later, and little did I know that joining LimeLife, which is a direct sales company, which, I personally had a lot of strong feelings about that industry in general, had to get over. And once I joined and was able to sort of take a peek behind the curtain and see what this was all about and figure out how to make it work for myself, it was like lighter fuel. It was a turbo boost to my career. Like, I was already doing pretty well. And then once I added LimeLife to my offerings, it was like, yeah. So.
Oh yeah. You started doing some really incredible things. I mean, I remember the first time I saw New York Fashion Week, I was like, damn, because I knew that was always one of your dreams.
Yeah.
So for your dream to then be actualized was like so incredible to see you achieve.
It was great. And then in addition to that, I remember some years prior wanting to be in a place where I could educate. I wanted to be the person that could help, like, mentor the next generation coming up. But I didn't feel like I had the resume to support it, because a lot of my teachers were like celebrity makeup artists. Like, this one works with Lady Gaga and this one works on TV and films and all of that stuff. And as a woman who lives in the suburbs with 2 children, who is also a makeup artist, like, I didn't have the resume to support it like some of my mentors did. So when I joined LimeLife, it gave me the platform that I needed to feel like I could not only teach the people around me and in my community, but also help to teach and train other aspiring makeup artists or other people within the company who just want to be better about supporting the people in their communities. So it really allowed me to sort of build up my chops in teaching and mentoring and leadership and public speaking and things of that nature. So when I say that, like, I am not where I am today professionally without having had LimeLife be a part of that, I truly believe it. It would have taken me a lot longer to get to this point, I feel, to feel the confidence that I do currently have in being able to support and lead others.
Yeah, and the great thing too about LimeLife that I was witnessing from the outside looking in was the community side of it. So you had a lot of support. It seemed like you had a lot of support and cheerleaders to help you as you were, at this point, you're back into it with bridal, but you're also, I'm sure, wanting, like, when we were working together, we were doing bridal, but that was like our day job. And then we would like go hit those fashion streets and run it, so, I know that was just a part of your being, to do that stuff. And so to be able to be supported as, you are absolutely enough. Your artistry is so great that we want you to teach. And I can just see how all of that support just could kind of bring you back out, bring you back front and center and say, yeah, man, I am good at this. That's right. Yeah, I've got a lot I need to share, you know?
Yeah.
So that's
and
amazing that they
it
gave you
took
that.
me getting out of my own way and getting out of my own head and letting go of these sort of like, you know, these false conceptions that I have about this industry that I honestly knew nothing about to be having any type of feeling towards, you know. It took me just trusting, listening to that intuition, and trusting the journey that I was on, surrendering, if you will, to the journey that I was on to really open myself up and level up in that way. And so now I'm truly doing what I've always wanted to be doing, which is just helping support and just helping to support the people in that are like me. You know what I mean? I feel like my ideal client is always someone who's sort of like a reflection of who I am. There's something about being in your 30s and feeling too young to be old, but too old to be young. And maybe you've got a couple kids and maybe you're running around and maybe you've had to let your dream go because you're on this motherhood journey or whatever the case may be. But like, those are the women that I'm talking to. Like, I see you, I am you. There is hope. In the meantime, like, how can I help you feel good? Like, here's this moisturizer that I think is going to do wonderful things and helping you feel good about how you feel in your own skin. Here's a little lipstick, you know what I mean? And not from a vanity standpoint, but just from a like personal empowerment, like just seeing yourself in a new light. I don't know. It's just, there's something that it's always a really feel good interaction. That's the beauty about makeup artistry in a lot of ways, in that it's very, you get positive reinforcement, positive feedback right away, you know? So to be able to help someone feel good and look at themselves in the mirror and say, yes, this is always what I've envisioned, or you were able to bring a side out of me that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
That's always the goal. That's always the juice that I'm looking for. You know what I mean?
Oh, so good. Yeah. Heck yeah. So that juice. So if I feel like this is going to be a really great spot to ask you about your thing, your one thing. But before we get there, I want to just not leave out a really important part of the story. From my perspective, it was very important. But your intuition, we were together in Orlando for the premiere show, which is a huge convention for hair and makeup and skin and everything else. And in all that noise of all those thousands of people and all those different booths and everything, you got a feeling like, I'm going to go explore. And there was so much going on. I was like, okay, I hope we find you. And you came back and you're like, I found it. And you came and you ran, you got us, and you pulled the whole team. Because as a team, we were all there together trying to find education, but there really wasn't a lot of education. It was a lot of sales and a lot of hair.
Right.
Not necessarily anything on makeup. And we're a group of makeup artists, like hungry, ready, right? So I remember you grabbing us and you taking us to this room, and we were like, oh my gosh. And in that room, legends were in that room. We had James Vincent teaching. We had Orlando Santiago on the floor. We had these people that were so comfortable being in that space and educating. And this is where I want to say, like, you weren't necessarily the best student in college because the subject matter wasn't so interesting. And I'm with you on that, by the way. But let me tell you what, y'all, when we were in that zone and they were teaching, Melissa and I were front row center. We fought for those seats. We wanted to be right up front, and you were the best note taker there was, right next to me. I mean, smoke was coming off our pens. So I just want to make sure we don't leave that part out, because that was a huge moment of not only seeing a different way to do it, right? Feeling that community support outside of ourselves. But then James also looked at me because I was like, I'm so happy you're here educating. And he was just like, and you need to do it too. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And so, he really called me out on that. And so it started me on a different journey. But I wanted to make that point because number one, you followed your intuition, which was you took us all in a way that we all needed to go on. But then also you got to light up as the student you were meant to be. You were actually a makeup student and educator, and that's what was lighting up in you. And it was so I feel like for anyone listening, when school doesn't necessarily feel like a right fit, check the subject matter. It may not be the student.
1000%. Oh my goodness, that gave me the tingles. Woo, chill
good.
bumps.
So let's keep going with that juice, sister. So tell me. So now we've heard your incredible story, which gives me the chills. Right now, golly, all over. And hearing not only the major, trials and tribulations, the struggles that you went through, you had to overcome to keep going, right? Just to not give up, just to keep going in life, just to keep showing up. But then to have this part of you that was always like, hey, follow this way. And your future was always tugging on your present, leading you, guiding you, right? I just kept hearing that throughout your story. You never gave up, you kept going. So now you're at this space, like right here, right now in this zone. So what is the thing that you now is on your heart that you want to share with the world? What's like the one thing that is the most important thing for us to know about Melissa Collazo? Please tell me.
I am the one thing that you need to know about Melissa Collazo is that she's always going to keep it real.
All right.
Authenticity above all else. And I feel as though, and I feel like we alluded to this a little bit earlier on, is that we are always so shaped by our experiences, by our environments, and that oftentimes we're not one to listen to our own intuition ourselves, right? It's very common for women, even later on in life, to not know what they actually enjoy, how they like to dress. Like, why do you like the things that you like? Is it because you actually enjoy them and like them? Or is it because that's what you were told you had to look like, be like, act like, so on and so forth? So it sort of led me down this path of creating a community that I call the Real MC. It's my hive. Those are my people. That's where we get to keep it real. We get to have real conversations about beauty and motherhood and womanhood and so on and so forth. But more than anything, I want to share my one thing as beauty is yours to define. You get to be the person who sets the standards in your own life, regardless of what it is, honestly, whether it's your beauty or whether it's how you choose to mother or whether it's how you choose to live and love and learn. I feel like our society has this constant conversation of having the next luxury, the next big whatever, fill in the blank. But what if you were the person to set those standards for yourself and then live up to them? So at the end of the day, your life, beauty, all of that is for you to define, period.
Woo! It's yours to define. I love how empowering that is. Like how exciting that feels. Because how many times have we just been given these thoughts or feelings, if you will, passed down or collected and, just the norm, the standards, right? I have to do this. How many women have you taught, Melissa, that when you ask them about their beauty, they just feel like, oh, I have to do these steps. These are the things I use. Right. And they've never even thought about, well, how do I actually want to look? How do I want to show up in this world?
Right.
So you're giving them the power to not only realize the choice, but then to do something with that power.
Right.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
To make those informed choices. And there's something about standing in your truth and saying, this is what I enjoy. This is what I like. This is what I want to look like, feel like, act like, that allows you to step into your own spotlight. And so many of us are so used to shrinking and making ourselves small and trying to fit into these pre-made boxes that can't contain all the beauty that we have inside of us. So if you're able to define what it is that you enjoy, if you are able to define what it is that you feel makes you feel like the best version of you, then that's what we need to be leaning into.
So Melissa, tell us where we can lean into that with you.
Oh my goodness. If you really want to see who I am and what I'm all about and continue to have this open dialogue and conversation, I spend the most time on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Melissa Collazo _makeup. And that's where you can really get a feel and a flavor of who I am. You're going to see me, you're going to see my kids, you're going to see my family, you're going to see my, how I take my coffee in the morning, like all of that stuff lives on my Instagram, Melissa Collazo Makeup. That's also where you can go to find all sorts of links. And, I share a lot of the products that I love to use, anything that I recommend is going to be in that space as well. That's the best place to find me and connect with me. I also have a website, but that is much more of a sort of like portfolio page, if you will. But if you want to see some of my work, you can definitely visit me at my website. It's also melissacolazomakeup.com. And there's going to be more to come. So, all I can say is stay tuned.
We are just getting started. I love it. I'm just realizing this like full picture of you, Melissa, and it's going from just loving makeup, it being a part of your experience, to maybe I want to do this, to then becoming an executive with LimeLife and an educator for the powder group. Like, just from the, that's fun, I like that, into like being so top level with it. And then now sharing all of that with your clients and saying, guess what? Let's rise it up too. I know this is something that's not only important to you, but I want to help make it more enjoyable for you and empower you. So incredible. So those classes, we can get you online. We can learn with you through your website.
Yes, absolutely. That's definitely where you can go to book anything with me. I am happy to connect with people virtually. If you are not in the DMV area, I am currently in Maryland near Annapolis. But I'm happy to do things virtually. I love working one-on-one and in small groups. I really am happy to any opportunity that I have to just commune with people and teach, and I'm right there for it. So if I have something that I can offer you, please come find me. Let's do it.
Oh, I love it. She said, threaten me with a good time. You heard that? And we will, right. Melissa, we will. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been wonderful to have you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you, Miracle Lab community. It's been wonderful.
All right, guys, we are going to end this episode, but stay tuned. Go on to the Miracle Lab and find more inspiration there at www.themiraclelab.org. Till next time. See you later, friends. Bye.